Hello and welcome to Traditional Painting the Digital Way. This is where I use digital painting apps to teach traditional painting techniques. This is part 2 in my Don't Be Afraid of Color series. And in this video we're going to go ahead and paint in the foreground and paint in several of the bushes that are also in the foreground. If you want to follow along with traditional materials, check out part 1 in this series, where I have a list of all the paint, brushes, and canvas that I use. We're using Infinite Painter for Android, and here I'm going to go ahead and paint in the foreground. And so what you want to do is continue bringing out some of the color, and I want to go ahead and add just a little bit of blue in the background there, just to bring out the color of the shadows that are in the background. And again, the shadows are going to look sort of a bluish color. You definitely don't want to make your shadows look black, because if you make your shadows look black, that will just look like big black smudges of things, and it won't look natural at all. So you want your shadow color to be either a purple or a bluish color. And if you're following along traditionally, that would be with dioxazine purple or ultramarine blue. And you can add just a little bit of maybe some burnt sienna to darken it down. But again, you don't want your shadows to be black. You want those to have a little bit of depth to them. And so here I'm just kind of smoothing out the background. And now we're going to start on the dirt in the foreground. And the dirt in this picture and in this area is kind of sort of a pinkish color. So you want to go ahead and take some cadmium red light and throw in some white acrylic gesso and maybe some yellow ochre, and just kind of add all these colors in. And so I'm just kind of smudging those in, making them put them in the front here, and I'm going to go ahead and smooth them out later, but I'm putting in pockets of dark and light. So you can throw in maybe some burnt sienna if you're following along with your acrylics, and just a darker brown to this sandy soil color, this red kind of pinkish sandy color. And then also to make some more pockets of dark and light, you can throw in some blues and some purples. And that just shows the rocks that are out there kind of, and the texture of the soil, and how it lays there, the ruts and all the things that are out there, the piles of dirt and the little mounds and hills of dirt right there. You want to go ahead and just put those shadow colors in and go ahead and give it some texture. And then here I'm working on the grass in the background, and you would probably take your flat brush and go ahead and give it a little bit of some sparse look, kind of like you're making individual blades of grass sort of in the back, but you don't want to bring them out too much. And here I'm just kind of playing around with the brushes and Infinite Painter, trying to get a sort of a splatter look there for the foliage, because you want it to look kind of fuzzy, not exactly fuzzy, but you want the leaves to show up, but you're not making individual leaves. You're kind of just giving a distinct or distant impression of the leaves. And so this is what I'm doing here. I'm trying to make the clumps that look like the little leaves that are on these greasewood bushes that grow out here. And they're also called creosote bushes. We call them greasewoods out here, but they're creosote bushes, I guess, is the proper term for them. And they have kind of a funny tangy smell when you crush the leaves in your fingers, and they feel kind of greasy, I guess. The texture is kind of sticky, kind of greasy. Anyway, they're a very distinctive smell, a not unpleasant smell. I like it, but I've grown up with it. So, but anyway, so I'm trying to just kind of give the look of those leaves. And then here I wanted to add a little bit more of the shadow color to the distant hills. So I'm putting in a little bit more purple and just trying to smudge it in. Again, we don't want any harsh lines in the background hills because they're very distant. So you want to just kind of smudge all those shadows and the ridges of the hills. You want to smudge those down and make those look soft. And so I'm working on adding just a little bit of some greenish color there, just to give a idea that the greasewood bushes are also way back in the back there, but they would be indistinct because they're very distant. So I just wanted to kind of work a little bit more on the hills in the back, work on the shape just a little bit more. But again, smudging in all the colors that I'm using. And if you're following along traditionally, you would use some yellow ochre there, just to throw that in the back there. And again, like I said, you want to bring out those colors because those colors are in the landscape. But you might want to exaggerate them just a little bit. You don't want to over-exaggerate them, but you do want to bring those colors out so that the viewer's eye can see these colors. And it just adds more depth to your painting and makes it just makes it more interesting for the viewer's eye. And so here I'm just trying to find a good brush for the leaves on the creosote bushes, the greasewood bushes. And also I want to kind of give a little impression of gravel in the dirt, because there's going to be little bitty rocks and gravel type things. So I'm using one of the splatter brushes, an Infinite Painter. And if you're following along traditionally, you can use an old toothbrush, and just dip it in your water and thin the paint down really well, and just splatter that on your painting, but make sure that you don't get it in the sky or on your mountain or things like that. So you might cover it with a piece of paper, but anyway, that gives you a really good gravel texture. And then here I'm adding the stems for the greasewood bushes, and these are all the branches, and they're very crooked and sort of a jagged look, so you want to make sure that you don't make them look real straight or anything. They're very crooked and they meander around, and so you want to kind of give that look. And if you're following along traditionally, you'll want to use your script brush with this and use burnt sienna with burnt umber and maybe some ultramarine blue, and just get a sort of a dark brown mixture and mix it with your water so that you can get a really thin mixture and almost make it like an ink-like texture. And so here I'm just adding that those branches in the foreground here, and also I'm putting some in the back. And you want to just make those really small, make the bushes look really small in the back, but you still want the details kind of right in the middle ground. It's sort of the middle ground right there, and you would add little branches, just a little bit. Don't overdo it, don't put a lot, but just put a few there. And then here I'm using one of the brushes to make a leaf pattern. And you can use, I like to use the Pollock brush, and there's another brush that you can use that's in the watercolors as well, that makes a pretty good leaf branch type of a brush there. And so this is the end of Don't Be Afraid of Color Part 2. And in part 3, we're going to go ahead and finish up the greasewoods and finish up the final colors and just add a little bit more to the dirt in the front. So if you want to see that, hit the subscribe button. And thank you all for watching. Thank you so much for your support. If you have any questions, just leave them in the comments down below, and I will catch you later.